So first of all, thanks for having the opportunity to be here today to talk to you and also share with you our experience from the journey towards the more sustainable. Therefore, also the title, Cultivating Greener, how to become more sustainable within agriculture, also within our company. And what we can also see in the title is about how we approach it. It's about responsible production and it's about resource use efficiency. And then there is a plus. This is about nature positive production. My name is Christian. I'm working for Bayer Crop Science now since 2017. Started there in the environmental safety function. So I assessed the safety of our products and then I shifted towards policy advocacy and now I'm working for our regional team. So it's for the EMEA region now in policy advocacy. First of all, I would like to give you some insights into Bayer. So Bayer is a life science company. We consider ourselves a global leader in nutrition and also in healthcare. Our motto is Science for a Better Life. And just some figures about Bayer. Bayer is divided into 3 divisions. So I'm working for crop science. Then we have a division on pharmaceuticals and also consumer health. We are represented in 83 different countries and have about 101,000 employees worldwide. Our sales range about 50.7 billion euros, and we have a large portion also dedicated to research and development. Our common vision across all 3 divisions is health for all, hunger for one, and this also informs our sustainability strategy. Here I would like to give you some more insights how we approach sustainability within Bayer. Bayer is of course based here in Germany, but of course it's a global company. And what we do here is that we look at the internationally aligned goals. So we have here the focus on the sustainable development goals. And this is also where we link our vision to health for all, hunger for one. Then you see the triangle in the middle. And here we have actually 3 different perspectives. The first one is about acting responsibly through the entire value chain. The second one is reducing the ecological footprint. And the third one is about inclusive growth. In principle, we can describe it as the 100 million challenge when we go for the social aspect. It's about supporting 1 million smallholder farmers in low and middle income countries, and this also to support food security, so linking it back to sustainable development goals. Second one is access to health, and here it's about serving 100 million people in unserved communities with self-care products. Third one is women's empowerment, and here it's also 100 million women to help them also with modern contraception. From this, I would like to shift the attention towards the ecological footprint of our company, also operations, but also going here to the downstream part. A very strong focus also within the session, and we already heard a lot about it, is about climate change mitigation. And here we have our climate protection commitments with a very strong focus on climate neutrality at our sites and reduce emissions in our supply chain. So we want to reach net zero emissions until 2050. This is now focused here on our own operations supply chain. But then there's the third part, which is about the downstream. And here's the point where we think we can achieve most. Therefore, we have this commitment and this approach to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the field by 30% for our customers. So in the key agricultural crops. And this is also quite a different kind of challenge, shifting from own operations, from our supply chain, towards helping and supporting here our customers to achieve those greenhouse gas reductions in adopting their farming practices to improve farming. Of course, greenhouse gas emission reduction is not everything in ecology. There are many more factors related to nature. Of course, Bayer Crop Science is a very broad company. So what we are selling, among others, are also pesticides. So it's about chemical plant protection products. At the same time, we have also biological products in our portfolio. We have also digital solutions, seeds and traits, genetics. So it's a very broad product portfolio, and we combine them to reduce the environmental impact. Therefore, we have this commitment of environmental impact reduction. And what we're doing here, our aim is to reduce the environmental impact of our chemical crop protection, so of our pesticides, by 30%. This is based on an externally developed and validated methodology. It's based on ecotoxicology. Maybe you heard about these models. It's about UseTox and Pest LCI. And this is what we're using to actually streamline our portfolio and also the support for the farmers. Then there is another angle from our colleagues from consumer health, and this is towards going 100% products in terms of recyclable and reusable packaging. So this gives you a broad perspective how we within Bayer approach sustainability. And this is really across all three divisions, and they're united by the vision Health for All, Hunger for One, Hunger for None. Okay. So the question is now, how do we approach agriculture? What you see here are farmers standing in the soybean field. And when we look at sustainability in agriculture, there are many different approaches, many different forms of farming out there. There are many different metrics. And I already mentioned that we within Bayer, we have a strong focus on international frameworks, on international alignment. And therefore, it's really about the metrics that count. And we can see it through all of our sessions. What are your key metrics to measure your improvements? One very common metric are the greenhouse gas emissions. It's about CO2 equivalents. So this is one key metric when it comes to climate commitments. When we broaden it to nature, there will be many more metrics. It will be much more complex. And this is also what we see when we consider farming, when we look at agriculture. Fortunately, there are guidances out there. And here is an example from the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is an indicator which is about land under productive and sustainable agriculture. So indeed, it can be measured. And this has been defined by the FAO. What we see here also is that it covers all three dimensions of sustainability. And I think this is something very compelling. Because if you want to qualify as sustainable in your farm operations, you need to go across all of these different themes and dimensions at the same time. So if you perform very well on the soil health piece and on pesticide risk, but you lose on food security, because this is an issue for the farmers, you're not sustainable. Same if it's about you have very good efficient water use, but you lack the land productivity, then you're also not sustainable. So this gives you a very good impression how complex farming is and what it means for a farmer to reach sustainability. It's across all three dimensions and it's across all of these themes. What is now unique about this SDG? You can apply it for any kind of farming system. So irrespective whether you're an organic farmer, conventional agriculture, whether you do agroforestry or even vertical farming, you can always use these kind of indicators to see where do you perform quite well in terms of sustainability and where are improvements needed. Of course, when it comes to the measuring, so here the sub-indicators are also quite important, it gets more complex. In Bayer, so far, we had a very strong focus on the initial connection to the sustainability commitments, so to the other sustainable development goals. We basically followed it with the approach producing more with less to increase resource use efficiency. And here we once again see the major elements of our sustainability commitments. It's about reducing the environmental footprint of farming, so of our customers. Then it's about reducing the environmental impact of crop protection. And this is also downstream. So this is for the customers, for their cropping systems. So when they grow corn, as an example, to reduce the environmental impact of the pesticides in the system by 30%. It's also about the enabling smallholder farmers. So this counts for the social dimension and also improving the water use. Now, when we look towards the future, there's a new word rising, and this is about regenerative agriculture. So where does regenerative agriculture distinguish in terms of methodology, in terms of focus from sustainability one? Actually, it's adding something on top. It's a plus. So you're building on your sustainability level and you're adding something on top. And here it means for the farmers, for example, to have here an improvement in terms of soil health. Do we achieve a better soil structure? Are you protecting habitats or even creating habitats next to your field or even in those parts of the field where you don't have a good productivity? Or are you sequestering carbon, adding a plus to the soils? This is now the new focus that we have within our company, shifting from sustainable towards regenerative. One challenge and then already adding another challenge on the top. So how does regenerative agriculture look like? In principle, there's a pretty strong overlap between regenerative agriculture concepts and the conservation agricultural ones. In general, many people say that when we talk about regen ag, it's about outcome-based. We want to achieve certain key outcomes. How to achieve them? There we have the major principles. And when we look at those principles, they align pretty much with conservation agriculture. So very large overlap. It's about keeping your soils covered. So it's about having cover crops, actually avoiding wind or water erosion in the field. The diversification of rotations. Don't have only one crop, but to have multiple crops over the years. The third one is about minimizing soil erosion. So not to do plowing, but to go to no-till or just reduce till. Then it's about optimizing the impacts and optimizing the inputs and reducing the impacts. And this links us also back to our sustainability commitments, which are about resource use efficiency and about environmental impact reduction. What are the different outcomes that we want to achieve with this one? It's about improving the soil health. Here we link back to the carbon sequestration in the soils. It's about conserving water resources in the field. It's about mitigation of climate change. And here we have the synergy with the carbon sequestration in the field once again, but indeed also when it comes to optimizing the input. Because when we see about the major emissions, where they come from, it's the fertilizers that play a major role here. And to be here as precise as possible. Now there is something emerging on the top, which is actually strengthening the regen ag thinking, this concept in the background. And now we are entering from the field to the very high policy level. And this is about the nature positive concept. So we as Bayer, we are part of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And they're working on a nature positive methodology. So what does nature positive mean? It actually means that in the future we have more nature than today. How to measure? It's still unclear. But it's based on a methodology. And the methodology in the background are the science-based targets. And here for the nature piece, it's the SBTN. So they provide us also with the metrics, but they're very broad. There's pretty much discussion going on which kind of metrics we should use, which are feasible to measure, which are feasible to upscale. So this is now a lot of conversation going on, also between the industry members of World Business Council and the different associations over there. So the Science-Based Target Network is about setting the targets. And then you have the TNFD. So this is the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. And this is about the reporting on those. So if you want to go nature positive, according to the World Business Council methodology, you set your targets with the SBTN, then you follow them, and you disclose within the TNFD work. This is now all evolving. And this is on top what we've seen in terms of climate disclosures. So this is going to be the next step. Bayer also joined the TNFD just recently, a couple of months ago. And honestly, we're still on our journey to actually realize what it really means for our business. But in general, what we're following are really the basic principles, similar for the carbon piece. It's about assessing your dependencies. And then it's also about reducing the impact, setting your commitments with the SBTN. And then it's also about the reporting, following these metrics. And where do these metrics come from? Currently, there's a very strong aspect with the international or connection to the international agreements, like the Biodiversity Convention. We have for the CBD, so the Convention on Biological Diversity, we have the Global Biodiversity Framework. And in this Global Biodiversity Framework, we have specific targets that link back to agriculture. One of the targets is Target 7, which is about reducing the pollution and the risk of pesticides. So this links back to reducing the risk of pesticides. Then another one is the Target 10, which is about sustainable agriculture. And here one of the major levers is, among agroecology, also sustainable intensification, which means to reduce the land use footprint of the crops that you produce. So these are the international metrics that are also evolving. At the same time we're standing here, they're being discussed. They have feedback to the TNFD and SBTN world, and so far also then to the nature positive methodology. And we are now part of this conversation, trying to explore what's feasible also within our own operations, but also looking at the projects that we have with our farmers, what we can measure in the field, and what can be eventually upscaled and tracked through the value chain. Wow, this was quite a lot. You've seen a lot of different, also very high-level approaches, very high-level concepts. Question is now how to put them into practice. And it's really about the metrics that count. We've seen the concept of regenerative agriculture, and what I would like to share with you is one of our lighthouse projects, where actually many of these elements are combined and where we are testing them in the field. And this is really work in progress. And it's the Pro Carbono program that we have in the Latin American region. It really focuses on the key principles of regenerative agriculture or conservation agriculture. You see them here on the top. It's a combination of no-till or reduced till. It's about keeping your soil covered. So it's having cover crops or winter crops, and it's having more crops in the crop rotation. So these are the basic principles on the top. Then there are a number of different tools that are applied that the farmers can use to have here a positive outcome. So it's about optimizing the use of fertilizers. Here the digital agricultural piece, solutions like FieldView play a major role. It's about adjusting the seed rate, also to see which parts of the field have the highest yield potential, and therefore adjusting and optimizing for profitability. It's also about using genes and technology, specific traits. And when it comes to chemical crop protection, so pesticides, it's having a monitoring in the background to see, for example, where do weeds evolve in the field, to have it very targeted. What do we want to achieve here? And these are actually down here. These are the targets we are aiming towards. And this is not in isolation, but in combination. So we simultaneously look at those aspects. This links us a bit back to the SDG 241, because if you want to become sustainable there, you also need to look at all of these different dimensions simultaneously. And this is what we try to do here also within the Pro Carbono program, to have a look on the productivity in the field, at the same time on the biomass residues, to have more carbon in the field, to sequester it in the soils, to ensure it's still profitable or an increased profitability for the farmer, and then that there are also opportunities for biodiversity. This is quite a program. So how do we start? Actually, we start very small. So we start with strip trials. What you see here is a 3-step approach. Only the last step is the actual Pro Carbono program. a lot of research is actually done in the first two steps. So when we see here the strip trials, we have a lot of metrics that are measured in the field. Many different options are tested. Then when we see successful results, they are upscaled, they're regionalized, they're put to a specific region, and we test, for example, in our forward farming network, whether the cover crops are well suited for the farmers to really go to the farmers' needs in the specific region. This is still where we measure a lot of metrics at the same time. And when we are successful here, then it goes towards the upscale, which is the actual Pro Carbono program. Here we focus on main metrics. So something that is feasible for the farmers, also from a financial perspective, to regularly measure, like the carbon footprint. Also, we use here for the last step, for the scale up, a lot of modeling. So this plays a major role. Currently, we have here reached about 1,800 farmers in Brazil and 160 farmers in Argentina, just to give you a number of how broad the program has grown in the past years. So what do we now deliver in concrete numbers? And here, I'd just like to focus on the first part, the strip trials. In general, what we measure is a combination of the different dimensions of sustainability. So we look at the productivity. How much crop do we produce on this field per hectare land? This plays an important role because it represents the land use footprint. Land is a finite resource, and this supports sustainable intensification. We also look about the variability in the field, not only temporal, but also spatial variability. This is why adjusting the seed rate is so important. The profitability also plays a major role because this is the reason why farmers take it up. And then we combine it also with the environmental metrics. One about is the greenhouse gas emissions. We use different models here. And at the same time, you have a direct link to the resource use efficiency. So the advantage we have here is that if you use more precise fertilizers, you also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Soil organic carbon also plays a major role. When we then look at the chemical crop protection, we quantify the environmental impact, either with the environmental impact quotient methodology, which is quite common in the Americas. Currently, we're shifting towards the EIR, which is based on the use tax and pest LCI, also taking into account mitigation measures. We follow the soil properties, so physical, chemical, biological ones, linking us to the nutrients balance. And for the farmers, also super important is to look what are the key challenges in the field. So the ecosystem disservices. And here we follow also the evolution of the pests, diseases, and the weeds in the field. And this is also important then for the precision application in the end. Now a perspective on what we achieved in those trials. To give you a concrete example about Argentina, moving now to a specific geographic region. Here, with those trials, we achieved up to twofold more time crops in the field. So it's really increasing the resource efficiency. So we had increase in yields, 8% in soybean, 21% in corn, just to give you some numbers. In terms of profitability, we were more or less equal, up to 9%, but generally remaining here on a similar level. What we achieved in addition was we had more use uptake of cover crops, so the farmers kept their soil more covered than before. And when this here about technology adoption, sustainable practices, it's about no or reduced till adopted by the farmers. So this is quite an uptake in the specific region. Now, when we look at other environmental metrics, we see that we have even less sprays of plant protection products in the field. And this is due to the combination of different tools and, of course, also using seeds and traits. Another one is concrete greenhouse gas emission reduction compared to the standard practice and also the carbon sequestration that we observed within the field. And this was then the basis going through the regionalization and then the upscale. what do we achieve with this now when we go to the international markets, through the supply chains? And this is now a parallel program. So we just heard about Pro Carbono. This is now about Pro Carbono commodities. And it is based on the same basis, on the same foundation. So what we see here is actually soybean as a commodity. We have it tracked, fully traceable. It is with a carbon footprint, and it's also deforestation free. So this is something that we brought to the market with a dedicated group of farmers, and this is our offer. And now it also depends on the market and how far it will be positively received. Of course, all this work that you just saw with these Pro Carbono field trials, with the upscaling, cannot be done by one company alone. So actually within Bayer, we had a collaboration across the different functions with digital solutions, with seeds, with traits, also our conventional crop protection colleagues. They helped a lot. So it was really breaking the silos. And then we had a lot of collaboration with universities, with actually governmental research organizations, at the same time also with other industry members, with farmers associations. So this was really the result of a very large collaboration, really across functions. Now, what are our current conclusions from this journey? So we've seen in the first run our sustainability commitments. And they're taking up through the different functions. And they're also inspiring our colleagues to find new business opportunities. So what we saw from Pro Carbono, this was more or less a grassroots initiative from the local colleagues. And then it got more and more momentum within the company. And our sustainability commitments helped a lot to strengthen it in this process. Then when we go to the actual Pro Carbono program, with this orientation on the downstream, with this results focused, what we see here is a very strong overlap to the ambition of the TNFD. So about our reporting frameworks, what they actually want to achieve. And this is actually an improvement of nature, of the environmental conditions. This is actually quite a valuable take home. And I think when it comes to the different targets of the global biodiversity framework, sustainable intensification, reduce the risk of pesticides, going further and having better resource use efficiency, I think we have quite a lot of alignment. Also in protecting habitats, when we go back to this deforestation-free label. Even though it's not fully tracked in all detail. Because here we need to look what is feasible. So it has been just mentioned, I think, also in the presentation from Holcim before. So we need to see about, actually the efforts and then the outcomes, and to really balance them. Currently, the uptake from the farmers is not due to this very well and very nice sustainability results in the end, but it's about the profitability aspect. I think this is also quite important to consider. It's taken up by these 1,800 farmers in Brazil, not predominantly because of the increase of soil organic carbon, but because of the profitability of the higher yields. This is where they see the main benefit. And for us, to bring it into this kind of context, to have this uptake, was really to combine the economic and the environmental factors, to look always at them simultaneously. If you want to make it now much broader, when we look at TNFD, many different metrics, then there's currently a limiting factor in terms of costs. So when we want to acquire, when we want to have more data, then this comes with a lot of costs. If you go for the upscale, it's currently not feasible in such a way. Modeling helps already quite a lot. And we see already many observations and tools like digital monitoring, satellite observation, all emerging. And this is what we are closely following, looking about new opportunities to make it better feasible. And then another point is data ownership is quite an important aspect as well, because when we look at the downstream part, it's not Bayer operations any longer, but it's the farmers. So it's the farmers who also own the data. And this is also something to consider if you want to have a data collection. So with this, I would like to thank for your attention. And yeah, look forward to the discussions then also on the table.